My wife and her sister spoke Spanish at family dinner, laughing. He has no idea I'm pregnant with Carlos's baby. This idiot will raise it as his own. I kept eating. Then I responded in perfect Spanish. This idiot got a vasectomy last year and has the paternity test results. Her fork dropped. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. Thanks. They say you never truly know someone until you see how they treat you when they think you aren't listening. For me, that silence wasn't empty. It was filled with a language I wasn't supposed to understand. I met Alina 5 years ago. I was the typical stable guy and engineer with a good portfolio, a paid-off condo, and a 401k that I actually contributed to. Alina was the fire. She was vibrant, passionate, and frankly out of my league in the looks department. She was also impulsive and terrible with money. At the time, I thought our differences made us a good team. I was the anchor. She was the sail, but anchors get heavy and sails just want to catch the next breeze. The dynamic shifted about 2 years into the marriage. It started subtly. I became less of a husband and more of a financier. My opinions on where we should vacation or what house we should buy were met with eye rolls. "You have no taste, Mark," she'd say, laughing it off like it was a cute quirk. "Just pay for it and I'll make it look good." Then there was Sophia. Sophia is Alina's younger sister, and if Alina was a sail, Sophia was a hurricane. She was perpetually single, perpetually broke, and perpetually on my couch. They shared everything: clothes, secrets, and a language. They were bilingual, raised in a household where Spanish and English flowed interchangeably. I, however, was a corn-fed boy from Ohio who took 2 years of French in high school and remembered none of it. For years, I sat at my own dinner table while they chattered away in rapid-fire Spanish. They'd look at me, giggle, say something that sounded sharp and fast, and then switch back to English with a smile. "What was that?" I'd ask. "Oh, nothing, sweetie," Alina would say, patting my hand condescendingly. Sophia was just telling me about a friend from back home. It's hard to translate. I trusted her. I trusted that even if they were being a little rude by excluding me, they weren't being malicious. I was wrong. The secret project last year, for our 5th anniversary, I decided to do something huge. Alina had always complained that I didn't embrace her culture enough. She wanted to go to Seville, Spain, for a month. I decided I wouldn't just take her there. I would learn the language. I wanted to surprise her. I wanted to walk into a tapas bar in Seville, order for us in flawless Castilian, and see her face light up. I wanted to prove I wasn't just the boring engineer. I downloaded the apps, but I knew that wouldn't be enough. I hired a private tutor. For 8 months, during my hour-long train commute to the city and on my lunch breaks, I studied. I treated it like a second job. I learned grammar, slang, and the specific rhythm of the dialect her family spoke. By month 4, I could understand almost everything. That was when the surprise turned into an investigation. It was a Tuesday night. Sophia was over, drinking my expensive wine. I was in the kitchen cleaning up dinner because Alina didn't cook while they sat in the living room. "The ATM is cleaning again," Sophia said in Spanish, loud enough for me to hear. My hand froze on the sponge. "The ATM," Alina laughed, a genuine, cruel laugh. She replied in Spanish, "Let him be. At least he's good for something if he's useless in bed." My stomach dropped. I stood there, staring at the dirty dishes, my heart hammering against my ribs. I wanted to storm in there and scream. I wanted to throw them out, but the engineer in me took over. Rage is messy. Data is clean. If they thought I was useless, I needed to know exactly how useless. I needed to know everything, so I kept my mouth shut. I kept studying. And I started listening. The trap over the next few months, I became a ghost in my own home. I learned that they thought my hobbies were pathetic. I learned that Sophia was encouraging Alina to live a little while she was still young. And I learned about Carlos. Carlos wasn't a physical affair, at least not at first. He was an old flame from their hometown who had moved to the city to be a fitness influencer and part-time artist. To me, he sounded like an unemployed guy with an Instagram addiction. To Alina, he was pure passion. I heard them comparing us in their language. "Carlos understands my soul." Alina would sigh. "Mark understands spreadsheets." Sophia would reply, "I knew the marriage was dead. I was just waiting for the right time to call the coroner." But then I noticed something terrifying. Alina started talking about babies. "We should start a family, Mark." She told me one night in English, giving me a look of calculated sweetness I hadn't seen in years. "I think it would bring us closer." I knew what this was. I was the safety net. She wanted to lock me down for 18 years of child support before she inevitably got bored. Or worse, she wanted a baby to distract herself from her miserable conscience. I didn't argue. I didn't fight. I simply told her I had to go to a specialized engineering conference in Chicago for 3 days. I didn't go to a conference. I went to a urologist. I paid out of pocket for a vasectomy. I signed the papers, took the volume, and got the snip. I spent the weekend in a hotel with a bag of frozen peas, recovering. When I came home, I told her the conference was exhausting. I waited for the post-op analysis. 6 weeks later, I got the email. Ozoospermia confirmed, sperm count. I was shooting blanks. I saved the PDF to my phone, password protected it, and backed it up to the cloud. I never told her. Why would I? We were trying, right? Every month she got her period. She'd act disappointed, and I'd play the supportive husband. Maybe next month, honey. The announcement fast forward to 3 days ago. I came home from work to find Alina beaming. She was glowing in a way I hadn't seen since our wedding day. But it wasn't love in her eyes, it was triumph. Mark, she said, holding up a positive pregnancy test. We did it, I'm pregnant. The room seemed to tilt. I looked at the test. 2 pink lines. Mathematically, it was impossible. Biologically, it was impossible. Unless I was the victim of a medical miracle, that baby wasn't mine. My mind raced back to the girls' weekends. She'd been taking with Sophia recently. The late nights she claimed were networking events. Carlos, I looked at her face, so full of deceit, so confident in her trap. She really thought she had me. She thought I was the dumb, boring wallet who would pay for another man's DNA to inherit my estate. Oh my God, I said, forcing a smile that felt like it was cracking my face. I pulled her into a hug so she wouldn't see my eyes. This is incredible. I invited my parents and Sophia over for Sunday dinner. She whispered into my shoulder. I want to announce it to the whole family together. Perfect, I said, and I meant it. That is absolutely perfect. Sunday arrived with a gray, overcast sky. The atmosphere in the house was electric. Alina spent the morning fussing over her appearance, while Sophia arrived early to help set the mood, which mostly involved drinking mimosas and criticizing the way I folded the napkins. Her parents, Roberto and Maria, arrived at 5 p.m. They are decent people, old school and hardworking. They always treated me with respect, which made what I was about to do feel slightly heavy. But they had raised these daughters. They had created the monsters who were currently clinking glasses in my kitchen. We sat down to eat. I had ordered catering from a high-end Italian place, Alina's favorite. I poured the wine, sparkling cider for Alina, obviously. The announcement happened during the appetizers. Alina stood up, tears in her eyes, and dropped the news. Mom, Dad, Mark, and I are expecting. Maria screamed with joy. Roberto shook my hand firmly, looking proud. A father, Mark. Finally, yes, I said, my voice steady. Finally, we ate. The conversation flowed, the wine flowed, and as they always did when they got comfortable, Alina and Sophia began to drift. The English sentences became shorter, the Spanish sentences became longer. They forgot I was there. Or rather, they remembered I was there. But they forgot I was a person. To them, I was furniture. Alina took a bite of her lasagna and leaned towards Sophia. She lowered her voice, switching to that rapid, confident Spanish I had spent 8 months mastering. Look at him. Alina said in Spanish, gesturing slightly with her fork toward me. He's beaming, he's so pathetic. I didn't react, I cut my chicken. Does he suspect anything? Sophia asked in Spanish, taking a sip of wine. About the timing, please, Alina scoffed in her native tongue. He's an idiot. He thinks he's a stud because we finally succeeded. He has no idea I'm pregnant with Carlos's baby. My heart hammered, but my hand was steady. I took a bite of food. Sophia giggled a nasty, sharp sound. What are you going to do about Carlos? Nothing. Alina said, wiping her mouth. Carlos is fun, but he's broke. He can't buy me a house like this. Mark will raise it. He'll pay for private school. He'll change the diapers, and he'll never know. This idiot will raise it as his own, and I'll still see Carlos on Tuesdays. They both laughed. It was a conspiratorial, smug sound. The sound of 2 people who thought they had committed the perfect crime. I finished chewing. I swallowed. I placed my knife and fork down on the plate with a deliberate clink. I picked up my napkin and dabbed the corners of my mouth. Then I looked directly at Alina. I didn't look angry. I didn't look sad. I looked at her the way a scientist looks at a specimen in a jar. I opened my mouth, and for the first time in our marriage, I spoke her language. Actually, Alina, I said in flawless, unaccented Spanish, my voice cutting through the room like a razor blade. This idiot got a vasectomy last year, and I have the paternity test results right here. The silence that followed was louder than a gunshot. Her fork dropped from her hand and hit the plate. Clatter, it was time to burn it all down. For 3 seconds, the only sound in the room was the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock on the wall. Elena was frozen, her mouth slightly open, looking like a deer staring down the headlights of a semi-truck. Sophia looked like she had swallowed a lemon whole. It was Roberto, my father-in-law, who broke the silence. He looked confused, his gaze darting between his daughter and me. He asked in Spanish, "Mark, what did you say?" I didn't look at him. I kept my eyes locked on Elena. Her face had drained of all color, the rouge on her cheeks now standing out like clown makeup. I continued in English, keeping my voice terrifyingly calm, that your daughter is right. I would be an idiot to raise another man's child, but thankfully I took precautions. "Mark, stop," Elena whispered. Her voice was trembling. "You're drunk. You don't know what you're saying." "Am I?" I reached into the inside pocket of my blazer. I pulled out my phone. "I didn't go to a conference in Chicago last year, Elena. I went to a clinic. I had a vasectomy." I tapped the screen, opened the file I had saved for this exact moment, and slid the phone across the granite countertop toward Roberto. "That is a post-vasectomy semen analysis report from 6 months ago," I said, pointing at the bold text on the screen. "Diagnosis: azospermia, sperm count 0, motility. It is medically impossible for me to be the father of that baby." Roberto picked up the phone. He adjusted his glasses. Maria, my mother-in-law, leaned in over his shoulder. I saw the moment the realization hit them. Roberto's face turned a shade of purple I had never seen before. "No," Elena shrieked, suddenly finding her voice. She stood up so fast her chair tipped over backward with a crash. "It failed. The vasectomies failed. It happens all the time. You're trying to frame me." She looked at her parents, desperate. "Mama, he's lying. He's crazy. He's been spying on me." "Spying?" I stood up slowly. "Is it spying to learn the language of my wife's family? I wanted to surprise you, Elena. I spent 8 months learning Spanish so I could talk to your grandmother. Instead, I learned that you think I'm a pathetic wallet and an idiot." "I never said that." She screamed, tears now streaming down her face. "I was joking. It was just a joke." "And Carlos?" I asked. "Was Carlos a joke?" Sophia slammed her hand on the table. "You bastard. You have no proof of anything. You're just jealous because you're boring and she needs someone with fire." "Proof," I repeated. "Right." I picked up my phone from Roberto's shaking hands. "You know, when I heard you two whispering, I hit record on the voice memo app. Just in case my translation wasn't perfect, I wanted to make sure I didn't miss a nuance." I tapped the screen again. The volume was all the way up. Elena's voice filled the kitchen, tinny but unmistakable. "He has no idea I'm pregnant with Carlos' baby. This idiot will raise it as his own. And I'll still see Carlos on Tuesdays." Then Sophia's laugh. That cruel, cackling laugh. I stopped the recording. Maria covered her mouth with her hand, a sob escaping her throat. She looked at her daughter with pure disgust. Roberto looked like he was about to have a heart attack. He slowly stood up, walked over to Elena, and for a second I thought he was going to hug her. Instead, he looked at her with eyes of ice. He asked her in Spanish, "Who was Carlos? Papa, please." Elena sobbed, reaching for him. He stepped back, recoiling from her touch. "You bring shame to this house. You bring shame to your husband. You try to pass a bastard off his family. Get out," I said. The room went quiet again. Elena looked at me, her eyes wide. "What?" "Get out of my house," I said. "You and your sister. Take your parents if they want to go, but you two need to leave. Now you can't kick me out." Elena screamed, "I'm your wife. I'm pregnant. This is my house too." "Actually," I said, checking my watch, "it's not. I bought this place before we married. Your name isn't on the deed. And considering the infidelity and the paternity fraud you just admitted to on tape, I don't think a judge is going to be very sympathetic to your occupancy rights." I walked over to the hallway table where I had left my briefcase earlier. I pulled out a manila envelope. "I had my lawyer draw these up this morning," I said, tossing the packet onto the dinner table right on top of the lasagna. "Divorce papers. I've already moved half of our joint savings, my half, into a separate account. I've canceled your credit cards. The authorized user accounts are closed as of 5 p.m. today." Elena stared at the papers. She looked at Sophia, who was now furiously texting someone, probably Carlos. "You left me with nothing." Elena whispered. The arrogance was gone. She sounded small. "No," I said, walking to the front door and opening it wide. "I left you with exactly what you brought to this relationship. Yourself and Carlos." I looked at Roberto and Maria. "I'm sorry you had to see this. You are welcome to stay and finish the wine, but your daughters need to leave." Roberto nodded at me. A sharp, respectful nod. He grabbed his coat. "We are leaving, Mark. We will not stay in a house of lies." He grabbed Alina by the arm, not gently. "Let's go," he commanded in Spanish. Alina was crying hysterically now, a messy, ugly sound. As she passed me in the doorway, she stopped. She looked up at me, mascara running down her face, searching for a trace of the man who used to do anything to make her smile. "Mark, please," she choked out. "The baby, it needs a father." I looked her dead in the eye. "Then you better call Carlos." I slammed the door in her face. I locked the deadbolt. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood and took the deepest breath of my life. I was alone, and I had never felt more at peace. The next 3 months were a master class in watching a train wreck in slow motion. I didn't stay in the house. I stayed at a hotel for a week just to avoid the possibility of her showing up and banging on the door. I had cameras installed at the front gate. And sure enough, the footage showed her car pulling up twice. She sat there for an hour each time, crying before driving away. The silence I imposed on her was absolute. I blocked her number, her email, and her social media. All communication went through my lawyer, a shark of a woman named Joyce who seemed to take personal offense to Alina's existence. But in a small town or a connected social circle, you hear things. I heard about the Carlos situation from a mutual friend who was all too eager to spill the tea. Apparently, when Alina showed up at Carlos' studio apartment with suitcases and a positive pregnancy test, the passion evaporated instantly. Carlos was a 28-year-old failed artist who lived paycheck to paycheck. He liked Alina when she was the rich wife, buying him dinners and sneakers. He did not like Alina when she was a broke, weeping pregnant woman looking for a provider. He lasted 2 weeks. The moment he realized the rich husband wasn't going to be funding the baby he bylaid, he literally moved back to his parents' house in another state and blocked her. So there was Alina, pregnant, living on Sophia's couch, which was actually in a tiny apartment with 2 other roommates and cut off from her parents, who were so humiliated by the scandal they refused to speak to her. Then the messages started getting through the filters. She used burner numbers. First came the rage. "You ruined my life. You're a narcissist. You planned this." Then the bargaining. "We can go to therapy. I'll sign a post-nup. Just don't leave me alone with this." Then the truth. "Carlos is gone. I have no money. I'm scared, Mark, please." I didn't reply to a single one. I forwarded them all to Joyce to add to the harassment file. The final encounter 6 months after the dinner, we met for the final mediation. It was a requirement before the divorce could be finalized. We met in a sterile conference room in a downtown office building. When she walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. The Alina I knew was meticulous. Perfect hair, designer clothes, manicured nails. The woman who walked in was wearing sweatpants and an oversized hoodie. Her roots were grown out. Her face was puffy and she looked exhausted. She was visibly pregnant now, her hand resting protectively on her bump. She sat across from me. Sophia wasn't there. Apparently, even the sisterly bond breaks when you're broke and cramping the other's style. Joyce laid out the terms. They were brutal but fair. The house was sold. Market was up, thankfully. I kept my retirement. She got half the savings that were in the joint account before I separated them, which wasn't much, as she had spent most of it. No alimony. Due to the documented infidelity and the short duration of the marriage, Alina didn't look at the papers. She just looked at me. "Mark," she said softly. I looked up from my laptop. "Yes, do you hate me?" "No," I said honestly. "Hating you would require energy. I don't feel anything for you, Alina. You're just a transaction. I need to close." She flinched as if I'd slapped her. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I miss you. I miss us. I know I messed up. I messed up so bad. But this baby," she rubbed her belly, "it doesn't have a father. Carlos is gone. You always want kids. We could. You could be a father to him. He could be yours in every way that matters." It was the Hail Mary play. She was banking on my nice guy syndrome. She thought the old Mark, the one who learned a language just to make her smile, was still in there, desperate to be needed. She was wrong. That Mark died the night. He heard them laughing in the kitchen. I took off my glasses and cleaned them slowly. "Alina, let's be clear about something. You didn't want me to be a father. You wanted a sponsor. You laughed about it. You called me an idiot for being willing to raise another man's child. I was stupid," she cried. "I was just talking trash with Sophia. I didn't mean it. You meant it," I said, my voice dropping an octave. "You meant it because you don't respect me. And you know what? That's fine. But I respect myself too much to be your plan B just because plan A turned out to be a deadbeat." I stood up and buttoned my jacket. "I'm not this child's father. I'm not your husband. I'm a stranger who used to pay your bills. That contract has expired." I looked at Joyce. "I'm done here. If she signs, let me know." If she doesn't, we go to trial and I play the recording for the judge, her choice. I walked to the door. Mark, she wailed a desperate, broken sound. What am I supposed to do? I paused with my hand on the handle. I looked back at her one last time. I suggest you learn a trade, I said, and maybe teach the kids Spanish. It might come in handy. 2 weeks before my flight to Spain, I received a phone call. It wasn't Alina. Her number was still blocked, and she knew better than to violate the harassment order again. It was Roberto, my former father-in-law. I hesitated. I had no legal obligation to answer. The divorce was finalized. The assets were split. And the house was sold to a nice young couple who had no idea about the toxicity that had once permeated those walls. But Roberto was a good man who had been dragged into his daughter's mess. I answered, "Hello, Roberto." "Mark," he said, his voice sounded heavy, aged by 10 years. "I know I shouldn't call, I wanted you to know. Alina gave birth yesterday. A boy." I stood in my new, quiet apartment looking out at the city skyline. I waited for a pang of regret, sadness, or maybe even curiosity. I felt nothing. It was like hearing the weather report for a city I didn't live in anymore. "I hope they are healthy," I said politely. "They are." Roberto's sighed. "She named him Mateo. She didn't give him a last name on the certificate yet. I think she is still hoping Carlos will come back." "He won't," I stated. It wasn't a guess. It was a fact. Men like Carlos don't raise other men's children, and they certainly don't raise their own if it interferes with their aesthetic. "I know," Roberto said. Then a pause. "Maria and we are helping her with diapers and food. But we told her she cannot move back in. Sophia is back in our basement because she was evicted, and that is enough punishment for one lifetime." I almost laughed. Sophia, the high-flying critic who mocked my ambition, living in her parents' basement at 32. "Why are you telling me this, Roberto?" I asked gently. "Because I wanted to apologize," he said, his voice cracking. "I raised him to be better. I failed, and I wanted to tell you. You were the best son I could have asked for. I am sorry they broke you." "They didn't break me, Roberto," I said, feeling a surge of genuine strength. "They just woke me up. We said our goodbyes." He sounded like a man defeated by his own legacy. I hung up and realized that was the final threat. Alina was now a single mother with no career, no husband, and a sister who was a financial anchor. They were trapped in a prison of their own making. I poured myself a glass of wine, Rioja. I looked at the email notification on my phone. Flight confirmed, JFK to Seville. I had learned the language for her, but I was going to keep it for myself. "Cheers," I whispered to the empty room. "Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. What do you think about this story? Share it in the comments.